So the first one, keep your subject line super short and add preview text. Preview text is so incredibly important to add context to the email and add additional insight to the subject line, especially if you do more vague subject lines. Number 2, use as few images as possible. Email deliverability is, again, a whole other topic. If you're wanting to learn more about that, I highly recommend using a tool called Glock Apps.
Hello everybody, today's guest is Ashley Kate DeLuca. Ashley is an email marketing expert that believes in keeping email marketing simple. In this episode, we covered a lot of interesting stuff that are related to email marketing. Deliverability issues, tips for better headlines, is the money really in the list, how to segment your audience, email split testing, and much more. Please enjoy this wide-ranging conversation about email marketing with Ashley Kate DeLuca.
Welcome to the EcomXFactor podcast, where it's all about launching and scaling your business using sales funnels, automations, and smart marketing. And now, please welcome your host, the founder of EcomXFactor, Yaron Bin.
Hi Ashley, how are you doing?
I am doing fantastic. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, and thank you for bringing these energies. Like, you just hopped on the call and you were immediately like smiling and elevating the energy. So it's amazing, and I appreciate this.
Yes, 100%. I hope that everybody else can feel that as well too. That's one of my goals, and something I wrote down, and something I actually write down every single day, is I want to bring massive amounts of positive energy into every room I'm part of. So I really appreciate that.
Cool. Well, can you elaborate a bit about this before we dive into the content? So how does your daily ritual look like? What exactly do you do?
Yeah, so essentially this is a process that has been taught to me by my mentor, George Bryant. I work one-on-one within his mastermind with him. And one of the things that it's called like self-journaling, in terms of being able to visualize like who you are right now and also putting into practice what your future is. So I just have like a normal like line notebook. It's like super important to make sure you actually do it on a notebook, or so I'm told. And so within that, the very first thing, I'm going to like today's page. So the very first thing that I write down is like my I am statement. And so this is like my statement of like who Ashley is. And so when I originally went through this process, I got asked like, who are you? And I was like, well, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm an email marketing strategist. And you're like, oh, no. Like, who is Ashley? Like Ashley without all of those additional labels. And so what I settled on, and kind of like my 3 words, is I'm a confident, secure, and loving woman. So I start off by writing out that same statement 5 times. And I just constantly remind myself of that throughout the day in terms of the different situations that I'm going through and things like that. I'm always like, no, I'm a confident, secure, and loving woman. Like, no, it's good. Like, we're going to do the thing. Cool. And so so we just go through this process of writing that out, and then really diving into, what are you grateful for? How are you going to show up today? What is your future self? Like, how would your future self show up today? So I think about Ashley at like the $1 million mark, the $10 million mark. Like, what does that Ashley look like, and how does she show up? And so that's what I channel into. And then I also talk about like, okay, so like, how am I feeling? And so today, I'm not even going to lie. I'll just be totally honest. I put, today I'm a bit nervous, but it's going to be okay. And so it's just like, like it's just showing up authentically to like who you are. And, just making sure that you're just checking in with yourself and ensuring that like, okay, the person I'm showing up as today is building myself to the person that I'm looking to become, 5-10 years from now.
Cool. Sounds amazing. And I know it's not the topic that we're going to focus about today, but I am still curious. How long have you been in this mastermind, and what have you also gotten out of the mastermind?
Yeah, so I've been in the mastermind for about 6 months now. And so usually at this point, any program that I'm part of, I always evaluate and take a look at, okay, so what are some of those like tangible things that I've gotten out of it? And what are some of the maybe intangible things that have been really helpful? And so just to kind of give you an idea, some of like my more tangible outcomes. So my income has definitely increased, like at least by, I would say 30%. Since I've started, which is super incredibly exciting. almost like we're working towards double, and we're like getting there. We're getting really close. And then another thing is that it's a really amazing partnership and referral community. It's not necessarily like a lot of times I've been in previous masterminds, just to kind of give you an idea, where you're like, oh, you owe me one. It's never like you owe me one. It's like, here, how can I come up and like show up and serve for you? And I know eventually you're going to get me back. Like you'll be able to help me in some other situation. So like this mastermind is so completely different than any other mastermind I've been part of, because not only is like the community on board, but also too, it's really more so about all of these other people are showing up at a much higher level version of themselves too. So like one of my biggest problems with other communities I was part of is I felt like I was like, I don't want to say the top dog of the room. That's not what I'm implying, but like I would outwork everybody else around me. I'm an Enneagram 3 wing too. Like I am here for it. Like I have big dreams. I'm going after them. I'm chasing them. And so often I felt like I was dragging people behind me. I'm like, come on, let's do this. We're going. Like trying to give them my energy, right?
Yeah.
And so within this, like I get so personally motivated and fired up and inspired. And I have just walked away with so much more time within my life, within my business. My work-life balance from 6 months ago has completely changed. This is something that I've been really working on, especially, you'll probably hear him. I have a 2-year-old. And, I originally started out working 60-hour work weeks. I was working my booty off. I was doing all of the things. And so over the past year, I've really started transitioning into this, where I'm more so like, working, 4 days a week, and really specifically working like around 5 to 6 hours a day, being very extremely intentional in everything that I'm doing. And being in George's mastermind has just amplified some of the things that I have personally felt like I've been called to do. And I could talk about this all day. This could be the entire podcast episode, but I know that's not what you guys came here for. But yeah, George Bryant, literally has changed my life. And I just messaged him yesterday and I was like, I've been working really hard on quiet time, because I'm very much so like, I'm a very talker, like obviously I love to talk. And so it's like, and I just wanted to say, I'm so incredibly thankful and honored to be part of your world, because like, this is like next level and I'm so incredibly excited for it.
That's so cool. I'm so glad for you. And I'm thinking of joining a mastermind as well. And also one of my concerns is I want to be involved with people who are even 10x than me, because I want them to teach me, and I don't want to be in a group that I don't feel that I'm benefiting from. So that you find a similar group. This is awesome. So let's maybe shift our conversation to the topic that we've gathered to talk about, and this is very tactical insights about email marketing, which you're an email marketing expert. And can you tell us a bit about your background story and how you got involved in email marketing?
Oh my gosh, yes. So I started out when I was 14 years old with a stack of library books and a laptop that I bought with babysitting money, starting to write articles and trying to get my way to becoming a reporter. And so I had this great idea that I was going to become a blogger, so that way eventually I could become a reporter. And basically, even at 14, I had a vision for like what my life was going to look like. I was like, I'm going to have an apartment in New York City. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to be phenomenal. We're going to have all the things. And let me tell you what, now at almost, like, my birthday's next month, so almost at 26, my life is like completely different than what I ever imagined at 14. But what I will say is that those foundational things of me learning HTML and CSS and how to code websites was super foundational for later on in my journey. After I went to school, got my business degree, ended up going into corporate, and I just absolutely hated it. One of the biggest things that I got, let me tell you what, one of the biggest complaints I always got was that I was too loud and too passionate. And it was one of those things where I'm just like, listen, if I get passionate about something, my voice raises. I'm so sorry. I am working on it. And it was never like good enough, right? So when I got pregnant with my son, Nick, I knew I needed to make a change. I knew I needed to shift out of it. I didn't want to try to balance like corporate. And at that time, we had already moved into our home where we're at now. And I was just like, okay, all of these pieces are not fitting. I need to like make a change. And so I had already gone through the process about a year or so earlier, starting my first business, which was called Blank Slate Media Consulting. And I did websites, I did social media and things like that. And so I already kind of had a foundation. I was just working on Craigslist ads and all of this stuff. And I was like, all right, we're just going to figure it out. We're going to do the things. And so what ended up happening is I was doing these websites, and when I eventually went full time into my business and I left corporate, and my husband was like, listen, I don't know how you're going to make it happen, but okay, like, I trust you. You always figure it out. So like, let's just figure it out. And so everyone was talking to me about like, okay, I want you to input my email marketing forms. I want you to do this and that. And then like, I was in a very much so stage of my business where I was like, if I think I can figure it out, I'm going to figure it out. And so I had someone come to me and be like, hey, can you start writing my emails? And I was like, I don't know how to do that, but I will figure it out. Like, let's do this. And so when I first dove into it, I was so confused. I'm not going to lie. I was like, okay, we have tags, we have segments, we have groups, we have sequences, we have automations, we have funnels, we have campaigns, we have broadcasts, like all of this stuff. And I was like, it was so confusing. And so one of the biggest things that I decided that I was going to do by going into just email marketing is I was going to go through the process of simplifying the crap out of it. It's very interesting because like my best friend, Ashley, her name is also Ashley. We call her Ashley May, and then I'm just Ashley. But for her, her brain is totally different. She's an Enneagram 8. And so like the way her brain is like more complex, and she thinks about finer details and all the things. And I'm like, here is the exact simplified plan of all of the things. And so I just have realized over the past couple of years, like my gift is being able to take all of this complicated stuff and put it into a streamlined system flow that really focuses on being able to bring the customer back into your business and ensuring that your customer feels very much so seen, loved, and heard, which is really incredibly important for me because I went through a stage of my business where I felt like flat on my face. And the only thing that saved me in my business and me being able to stay home with my kiddo here is relationships. And so I put the like relationships at the top portion of my business. Like that is so incredibly important to me because I understand and value relationships within people, and I bring that into email marketing as well too.
Okay, so let's say I'm an e-commerce store owner. I mean, a lot of e-commerce store owners, especially in dropshipping and people that didn't yet develop a brand, they overlook email marketing as a traffic channel. And on the other hand, you see a lot of big marketers saying that the money is in the list. So I assume that you believe in the money is in the list and you're an advocate of that school of thought. But as an e-commerce store owner that doesn't have like emails on the back end, how do I start developing this relationship with my customers? Can you give like advice?
Yeah. Okay. So I definitely do believe the money is in the list, but you have to have the right kind of list in order to be able to make the money. So often we find that there's a lot of people who are like, just add more people. You just need more people. And the biggest thing is that like, for me, it's really more so about the quality. Like I want to have quality people on my list. And so it's super incredibly important from the very first email that you send out that you're bringing that quality to your subscribers so they can bring that back to you. So if I were to come into your business and I were to go through the process of helping you outline and map everything out, this is what it would basically look like. Okay. So the first thing that I do is I look at all of your access points. How can somebody join your list? So for a e-commerce business, usually it's about one of two ways, right? Or one of three. Essentially, they can opt into like a subscription form for a free coupon, a free download, or, like the spin the wheel, whatever you have, right? So you have something that's more so free. And then you can also have it where you have your abandoned cart, right? So when someone's already put in their information, they've gotten to the checkout page, but they just haven't pressed checkout. That's a secondary touch point, or another access point rather. And then the third one is obviously when somebody completes the sale, right? You've already completed the sale and now they're in that. So we have 3 different essential access points just in this. And there could be dozens more. There seriously could be, but we'll keep it simple.
Yeah, for sure.
So at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at those 3 different access points and consider where they're at in your journey. So for somebody who has just opted into something free, whether again, it's to spin the wheel or if it is just getting a coupon from you, this is somebody, if we were to classify them, this is somebody who is considered, I would say, a lead, right? This is somebody who hasn't checked out, they haven't purchased, they haven't gotten through the process of getting even to the checkout, but they're more of that like browser. So the number one thing I would look at is like, okay, what is the goal for that person? Well, we want them to convert. Like that's obviously the goal. So within that, what we're going to do is we're going to create a sequence of emails in order to be able to basically welcome them into our world, get them into another part of our ecosystem, whether that's a Facebook group, an Instagram, a podcast, YouTube channel, whatever that may be, introduce them into that. So that way we can have additional touch points from those social communities as well with that customer. And then what we're going to do from there is we're then going to educate them to then purchase. Now, depending on how your business is set up. So if your business is niche down and you only have like a couple products, so like let's say you have a planner, it's going to be really easy for you to do your content because you're just going to do your content around the planner. If you have something that's more a little bit like a dropship store where you have like clothing and shoes and things like that, what you're going to need to do is really take a look at the primary things that your shop sells best. Even if you haven't had a ton of sales, like even if you had maybe under 100 sales, you can still kind of take a look at like, ooh, okay, cool. Right now, everybody is into dresses. Like Easter's coming up, like we're here and like right now as we're recording this. So like if I were to do that, I would be really focusing on dresses and sandals and things like that around Easter. Now, obviously, there's different things that you can do within your geographic, your demographic, because obviously, if you're selling to men, you're probably not going to sell Easter dresses, right? So there's tons of variables here, tons of variables. But the most important thing or the biggest takeaway for this particular sequence is helping them get to the point of being able to get back onto your website. Your job is to get them back onto your website to browse. So giving those not necessarily tips and tricks, but more so of those like thought belief shifting of like, oh my gosh, like this is going to help you accomplish XYZ, whether it's, you know, I'm going to help you make you feel good, make you feel more confident, whether it's going to help you be more productive or help you plan your day better, whatever that is, brainstorm around that. Now your middle sequence, which is more so of like, okay, cool, they browsed, you know, I would consider them a browser, but they did go through the process of inputting their information to get their email. For these guys, something happened here. Like this is like your abandoned cart essentially, right? So with this one, what we're going to want to do is not necessarily go through and be like, oh my gosh, you forgot this. And I will say, as a mom of a 2-year-old, sometimes, yes, I do forget things because sometimes he's like got the bath water running and I'm like, oh crap, what in the world is going on? Or he's got the toilet paper strung everywhere. Totally happened this morning. But within that, what I look at is like, okay, cool. Like, what are some of the objections as to why somebody wouldn't purchase this product? And taking a look at that and addressing that, as opposed to just being like, oh, you forgot this. And I'm like, like there's something else there. So think about your objections in terms of why somebody wouldn't purchase. Again, really just looking at, you know, whether it's, you know, needing to use a discount code. I've done discount codes in abandoned carts. But for me, I wait until the second or third email to provide that. I want to get them on the objection side first in the emails, as opposed to just throwing a coupon code at somebody trying to pass the problem. And then for the third one, these are people who have already purchased, right? And a lot of times we're like, oh yeah, we got to the finish line. This is perfect. And I'm like, no, it's not over with. So especially if you have something that's like a recurring product or recurring subscription, this is so incredibly important to have a fulfillment sequence set up in order to be able to walk them through the process of like, hey, your product's on the way. All of those little touch points, which we could go fully in depth on like fulfillment sequences if you want to. But it's really about thinking about that journey in terms of like, what tips and tricks can I give them? What are things that are helpful? How can I help this person be successful? You know, whether it's reminding them to wear the dress, reminding them about something, or being hey, like, have you opened your planner this week? Oh my gosh, no, I totally forgot. Okay, cool. Well, let's just get back on track. Let's do the things and let's move forward.
So you mentioned brainstorming, and when you talked, and you also gave me an idea of how to approach this differently, instead of just telling them you probably forgot something, which is like the most obvious thing that most of the people do, but it's kind of stupid. As you said, you didn't say it's stupid, but it is stupid when now in hindsight, when I think about this. So do you have any frameworks that you're using in order to write the copy, or when you're just brainstorming, how do you want the flow to look like?
Yes, 100%. So let me pull up a template that I use here, which is basically how I go through the process of planning out my sequences and my emails, all of the things. So the biggest thing to remember here is there is no wrong way to write an email. I think the biggest thing is that a lot of times we try to get really stuck in the strategy when in reality, people just want you to be human on the other side. One of my best, like literally best top click, top open, top everything email is literally, it says, hey, in the subject line. And then it says, hey, first name, just checking in, want to see how I can help you this week. And just like reply, let me know. And then I signed off with Ashley. And I get so many replies. So many people will click links in my footer to go to other places. Like it literally looks like it just came out of my inbox, and it works so well because people are just like, oh, okay. Like my George, he had reached out to me. He was like, dude, why did you email me this? Like, you know, you can just Slack me, right? And I was like, yeah, this went out to my whole list. Like, it's not just you. I'm sorry. So anyways, just be human. But to answer your question, basically how I go through the process of planning my campaigns, it's really freaking simple again. So obviously the first thing is date, like understanding the date or when this email is going to be sent out. So if we're planning broadcasts, obviously you would put in like the date of like, okay, cool, we're going to do these weekly on Monday at 11 a.m. or whatever. If it's in a sequence, the first thing I start off with is like, okay, cool. When would somebody receive this? So for an example, if we're doing a fulfillment sequence, it would be after they purchased the water bottle, right? After they purchase the water bottle, they're going to get this sequence, for an example. So then within this, so I'm going to shift it away from the fulfillment real quick, and we're going to go to just like a normal campaign for a second. The first thing I look at is more so of like a pillar. And so I do content pillars just a little bit differently because I have a method. So within my email marketing, what I take my clients through and all of that good stuff, it's called my 3A method. So there's 3 different pillars. There's align, there's automate, and there's audit. So there's those 3 different things. And so my content, when I'm sending out content to basically anybody who has never purchased from me, whether it be in a sequence or if it's in a broadcast, I'm going to be talking about one of those 3 things. Now, within a e-commerce business, that's a little bit different because you guys don't necessarily have a method. But within that, you may have something very unique to your business. So it could be that you are, you have ethical, oh my gosh, my mind is going to blank. Ethical processing systems within how you create your product. Maybe you guys donate to a specific organization or charity, and that's one of your main, like, really important pillars of your mission. So these are all things that I would pull out within that, within like your process, within how you're different, your competitive advantage. Those are your guys' pillars. And so within that, you're going to link that to a pain point. Now, I like to look at pain points in terms of with not just something that's like physically something that's like hurting people, but within like, what could we improve in somebody's life? What is something that, you know, we could shift their thought around? What is something that we could like work through the process of being able to help people better understand? So for an example, so for one of my clients, they're a CBD and hemp company. And so basically for them, one of their pillars is they really focus on being able to bring money back into the Native American community and being able to help provide them with the resources and tools that they need to be able to do so. And so that is a particular pillar of their business. That's something they're very extremely passionate about and something that they do. So then the pain point that we could link that back to the audience is more so of like, how can you get involved for other people who are passionate about this? It could even be something more specific in terms of with like, why we're different, you know, like why would you order CBD and hemp products from us versus going to the drugstore and buying them or from somebody else? This can go into the benefits and features of your product while also talking about one of your main pillars of your business, which is, you know, the organization that you're most passionate about or who you donate to. There's an athletic brand that I follow, and they do a lot of stuff with like Dress for Success. So one of their biggest things that they do is they talk a lot about Dress for Success in terms of with being able to help women. And so within that, you know, the pain point that they talk about is like, you know, we create athletic wear that really focuses on embracing and being exclusive and the diversity and all of the things. And through that, like through that process, we're also like fueling that into Dress for Success. So like, that's like one whole way. But within that, what you would do is you would do the date, the pillar, the pain point, and then a CTA. I usually recommend having only one CTA per email. What ends up happening is a lot of times if we have too many call to actions within an email, it gets really freaking confusing on like, okay, do I go here? Do I do this? Like, do you want me to go to Instagram or Facebook? And I'm like, oh. So keep it really, really simple in terms of with where you want them to go, what the topic is you're talking about, and how you're coming across as that.
Mm-hmm. And do you normally do text, or you also combine with images or like thumbnails of videos? Like, what is trending? What do you see is outperforming these days?
So within trends, so if you were to go to like reallygoodemails.com and look at like other e-commerce business, there's a lot of imagery. There's a lot of more visuals. It's a lot more showy. However, within what I focus on doing for my e-commerce businesses and what has been working really well is flipping the script and doing more text-based emails. And here's why. The thing is that anytime, and like this may not, I mean, I could be speaking for everybody here, but like I'll speak for myself. When I open up an email from a business and it's all imagery and it's all perfect and it's all very showy and it's like, you know, all of that, I'm like, ooh, sales. Like they're just trying to take my money.
Sure.
I don't feel like it's building a relationship with me, as opposed to a text-based email that has like one or two images. You know, I really feel like they're taking the time to write and connect back with me as if they were sending it from their inbox right over to me. So again, being the gal who's all about relationships and really focusing on that psychology side of things within that, text-based emails rule on deliverability, making sure they actually get to the inbox, and also on the psychology side of things of being able to connect with that person on the other side and then feel like, oh my gosh, okay, cool, they're not selling to me, we're just connecting.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel the same. Whenever I see an ad in my email, I'm already marking it as spam or just going to filter. I'm not going to open this email or not. Obviously, I'm not going to click. So I totally agree with the text. And you mentioned like writing in a way that psychologically appeals to the customer. And when I wrote to you an email just to coordinate this email, I love the autoresponder. It had a GIF of you with your son, and you said, "Holy guac." I'm going to answer you in 48 hours max. And I loved it. It felt so personal. I was surprised because I never saw something like that. And I'm thinking of swiping it and copying it. just
Feel free. I don't think the mom and the wife would fit for you, but you could definitely swap that out.
Anyway, so how do you go about and make your email so conversational? I mean, what is the thought process that you're following?
Yeah, so honestly, the biggest thing that I look at is like, it's really about if I were to sit down with you over coffee, what would I say? And even when it comes to my autoresponder, I thought about it in the same exact way. You know, before we started, I was telling you about how, like, you know, I used to have this really long and quirky autoresponder and it was funny and but like you would read it once and never read it again. It was so long kind of thing. And I was like, how can I really make this as if like, if you literally like knocked on my door and I needed to tell you something, if I was like, oh no, I'm so sorry, like not right now, what would I say? And like, what would that look like? Well, it would probably look like me swinging the door open with Nick on my hip and being like, hey, I'm so sorry, I'm really busy right now. So like, I take that into consideration when I'm writing email copy is that, you know, if I were to have a literal human interaction with you, like one-on-one, like face-to-face, what would I say? How would that look like? And that even goes into how I write. Like I write very much so how I talk. And so one of the biggest things that I love about email marketing is that, you know, you don't have to have perfect grammar. You don't have to have it all perfect. If there's a typo, that's cool. Like it's just showing you're human. And it's one of those things where like, when you press send, you just let it go. Like it is gone. It is like, it's gone. Right. Yeah. And so, you know, that was one of like the biggest, coolest things about email for me is because I was originally doing blog posts and SEO and it's all structured in so many rules. And with email, it's really just, again, being human. Like it's just being yourself. And so when I write emails, I just focus on being myself. What I would Voxer you if we were best friends on Voxer, like that kind of relationship and that kind of language is what gets people and is totally different from everybody else.
Cool. Do you have, when we talk about any emails that really killed it, that comes to your mind, that you wrote something that was very personal or very funny that really killed it? Do you have any example?
Yeah. So I mentioned one earlier, the short reminder. You can literally take those short reminder emails and tweak them. I was going to say twerk, but tweak them. Tweak them in order to be exactly what it is that you're looking for, whatever, makes the most amount of contextual sense. So like if it's in a fulfillment sequence, I'd be like, hey, like, have you drinking your 70 ounces of water today? Or whatever that may be. Another email that has done really, really well has been over time. So this hasn't been one particular email, but I believe is so incredibly important, especially on the e-commerce side, is to really focus on not hiding behind the product or the products, like plural. Okay. And the biggest thing is that by coming forward and being the center of your brand makes such a huge difference. And I understand it can be super scary. I didn't want to do it at first either. And it took me the longest time to get out of my shell to really embrace my holy guacamole, sea turtle, coffee loving self. But those are all connection points that people will have and remember. Like I have people who will randomly message me Amazon links to avocado stuff. And they'll be like, hey, I saw this. Do you like this? Like, do you want, like, this is totally you. And I'm like, yes, that's totally me. Thank you. I don't know how much avocado is too much, but like, we're here for it. And so like, it's really about creating those connection points and just being real with your audience in terms of with what you're going through, how that's looking like. And sometimes it doesn't have to be via email, especially debating on like what kind of, I don't want to say like presence, but like appearance you want to make to your community. Sometimes like some stuff is just personal share, and I totally completely get that. But I've always been really authentically true and honest with my community about where I'm at, where I'm going, what's next, what am I working on? Because I want them to feel like, again, they're sitting down right next to me, working alongside me. Like I want to have that same feeling. So that way they're not like, oh, Ashley's like in this mystical mountain world of like never ever land, and like she's just working and like everything's perfect. I'm like, dude, no, like I cried 3 times yesterday, like it's totally cool, like it's fine, it's like it's bringing the human back into it and making them feel like, oh, okay, especially if you have other people who are right behind you. This is something that I have like really stepped into and realizing is that, some of the things that I've gone through and some of the things that I'm working through and, focusing on, these are things that like at the end of the day, I'm paving my own path to show others what is possible. And so, doing these crazy emails, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work, it's all about that process of just going through and just doing things. So that way I can show others what are possible through that.
Cool. And we talked about seeing what works and what doesn't work. So do you incorporate a lot of split tests? How do you split test an email sequence? Do you split test headlines or variants or create different flows? Or can you elaborate a bit about split testing in emails, and do you find it important or just an overkill?
Yeah, so split testing is really important. It's just a matter of like how much is too much. So one of the things that I recommend is clarity. Clarity is literally the most important thing that you can have in your business, which will make your life so much easier. So I don't necessarily go through the process of split testing content. Because a lot of times, within your open rates, like your open rates are just 2 things. It's the person who is sending the email and the relationship you have with that person. And then the other thing is the subject line. So I do a lot of subject line testing, which I have found shorter, sweeter subject lines and sometimes a little vague actually work best. Never misleading whatsoever, but really more so like, hey, that's like the best subject line ever, because people are like, what? Hey, what? It's just, again, thinking about it as if you were sending that email from your personal email, what would you write? And to be like sleazy or not trying to be like over thoughtful or anything like that. So that's the first thing. The secondary thing that goes along with that is really about going through and taking a look at your CTAs and understanding the effectiveness of them. And so that's where your call to actions and your click rate come into play. And so a lot of times when I'm auditing, I look at the subject line first, take a look at that, see what that percentage is, and then I look at the content. And try to take a look at that in a very much so way of like, okay, how would this resonate with the person who's receiving it? Does it make sense for this person to receive this email in their journey? And then thirdly, does the CTA or the call to action make sense for the rest of the content for the email, or is there something better that we could do? So those are some of the questions that I ask when I'm auditing campaigns and like looking at them. But within like full like split testing sequences, very rarely do I do that. Every once in a while we will, depending on the need or what we're doing. But a lot of times I usually just work within what we already have to be able to edit and tweak what that process is. Because for the most part, like I really, really focus, especially if I'm writing the campaigns, on understanding exactly the ideal client, like getting inside of their brain where I basically step into that person's shoes and they're right as if I were like speaking directly to them. So that helps a lot of times within like having to split test all of the things, because I already know my ideal client. I know the offer. I know everything that has to do around that. So for the most part, again, it's just tweaking subject lines to be able to pique their interest.
Cool. Interesting. And when you have a client, so how does the service that you give normally look like? Normally, do you send out, you obviously, I assume that you create the flows, and how often should someone broadcast? How often do you broadcast? Do you broadcast on a daily basis, on a weekly basis? Obviously, this varies between brands, but generally speaking, how does the ongoing work process look like?
Yeah, totally. Okay, so with all of my clients, we first start off with an audit. In order for me to be able to get a plan of where we're going, we need to know where we're currently at. So this is taking a look at all of your subject lines, all of your campaigns, all of the sequences, all of the flows, looking at your past broadcasts, your lists, your segments, your tags. Obviously, it really depends on what email marketing provider you have in terms of with like what that looks like. But it's basically every single like centimeter of your email marketing account. I'm looking at it. I'm taking a look at it. And so within that, we go through, we look at anything that you currently have, we tweak what you have to make sure everything is optimized and good to go. And then we address any holes. And so from that point, after the audit, you have the opportunity to be able to take my audit and run with it, implement the changes yourself, work with a VA to be able to do that if you already have somebody on your team. Because I give you literally the exact instructions or exact thing on the call or inside of the Google Doc to do the things. But then on the flip side, if you're like, no, like I want to work with you, I want to do the things, we also will do consulting. So essentially within that, it could be more so of just like, I'll consult you on all the things, we'll outline, I'll review and things like that. And then I also will do actual implementation services as well too. So looking at your flows, creating your flows, doing the list, doing the segments. And to answer your question about broadcasts and frequency, it depends on a couple different factors. So it really depends on your business itself in terms of with what you have going on. Looking at your current promotional schedule. Do you have a sale promotional schedule already set up? Do you not really do sales? Okay, cool. Like that's something I would need to know. Do you have a podcast? Do you have a YouTube channel? Do you actively do Instagram lives? Like, what are your ways of serving your community? What does that look like? Yeah. And then it also depends as well too on your list size. A lot of times within that, like I try to bucket people in one of two categories. Like you've either purchased from me or you've never purchased from me. And it's either one of the other, right? And so the content that I'm sending is very much so determined on where they're at in that journey, because obviously for somebody who's purchased, I'm not going to convince them to purchase again. Like I'm going to ignite that passion and remind them and all like that's totally different, right? The tone is different. Everything is different. So within that, I really focus on, broadcasting based off of that. But it's all very much so custom. It's very custom in terms of with what that frequency looks like, but at a minimum, regardless of all of the other variables that I literally just mentioned, once a week is like my minimum of like reaching out. Please just email your whole list if you need to, if you don't have it all set up. Like I would rather you send an email out to your entire list and be human with them and speak with them and talk to them and like be part of their world, as opposed to just being like, I'm not going to send an email this week. Like just send them an email.
Cool. And a lot of store owners, especially when they are beginning, I think that it's not the highest priority, hiring an email marketing agency. So obviously I do believe it's a misconception, but what do you think are the benefits of hiring someone from outside in opposing to keeping it in-house? Because some people might say, okay, I'm going to go to Klaviyo and it's pretty easy. The flows are straightforward and email broadcasting isn't so complicated. But obviously you don't know what you don't know. So can you elaborate about like the benefits of hiring someone like you or a similar agency?
Yeah, 100%. So obviously, as you just mentioned, you don't know what you don't know. But a lot of times, even within this, regardless if, this is email marketing or Instagram or YouTube or whatever, there are things that are constantly changing. I do a ton of behind the scenes work and study and like all of the things to keep on top of my email marketing knowledge, because this is exactly what I do. Like I live and breathe email. Like that's it. Also sea turtles and avocados, but mainly that. And so within that piece of it, like it's really incredibly important if you're wanting to show up really heavily on the email marketing side, even if you don't want somebody, to be in it all this, like if you want to keep your in-house person, I'm totally cool with that. Like, I'm not here to like disrupt your entire, team and all of the things that you already have set in place. Like, if it works, it works. But I'm just here to help give you guidance and support you in being able to show you additional ways in different areas where you're just leaking buckets of money. Because that's what it comes down to. It's really about taking a look at those holes and being like, yo, like after this 30-day mark, you just disappear. Like, no, like we need to keep following up. We need to start, doing this or that. Like there's so many different things that we can do in order to be able to patch that together. And so it's really just about bringing somebody in who literally lives and breathes that and really more so focuses on seeing those holes that you don't necessarily see.
Yeah, I just interviewed someone, and he said a nice phrase. He said, "You can't ride two horses with one ass." He said that in reference to specializing in some field. So you can specialize in also running your store, also running Facebook ads, and also email marketing. So it's great to bring someone that specializes and reads email, like you mentioned, which is what you're doing.
Yeah.
And you mentioned an important aspect is leaking money. So
yes.
what should someone expect? I mean, normally, obviously, it varies between stores and depending on the strength of your brand. But two questions. What should someone expect, generally speaking, to generate from emails, if you have any benchmarks? And the second question, how do normally agencies charge based on, some agencies charge based on fees, some are like performance based. So can you elaborate about these two questions, basically?
Yeah, totally. Okay, so in terms of with benchmarks, I don't necessarily have any. And the reason why is because everybody is completely different. It's really more so about, because here's the thing, like email marketing is part of your ecosystem. So if you don't have a strong strategy in terms of with getting people to your website to then get onto your email list, like we're going to lose the game here. Like there has to be a solid flow of it, like a good ecosystem between a social platform, your website, and your email. Same thing too. Like I can write the best campaigns out there, but if your website isn't mobile optimized or if it isn't fit for any of those things, like it's not going to work. It's totally not going to work. So like when I bring clients into my world, those are things that I look at as well too before I agree to do any kind of consulting, because it's really important to make sure that like I'm going to bring my best foot forward and like we're going to go in, we're going to do the things, but all of these other pieces have to work as well too in order for me to be able to shine. And then for your second question, within that, I think usually, it's different for everybody. It really is in terms of with how people work and what they're comfortable with. And so for me, I'm very much so like a flat rate every single month. Like, you have access to be able to book a call. You can send me emails, like we're going to get done the things that you need to get done. Some are performance based and they'll do more so a percentage. I think it just depends on where you're at in terms of with your business, how much you want to spend, things like that. I charge a minimum of $1,500 for any of my services as of this moment. And so those are kind of like, all right, cool. Like if you're getting on my calendar, like this is the investment to be able to do so. And so it's really just in terms of I personally like to look at the personality, like in terms of me being able to embody your ideal client, the personality behind your voice, being able to strategically come in. And that's why I always do an audit first, because that gives me a really good idea of what your business looks like, if I can help you, what that looks like. And I always can give you like next steps, but I always am like, okay, cool. Like, let's just make sure that we have a really good, clear foundation and clear understanding of like what I can come in and help with. So that way there's no unclear expectations, nothing that's not met, and all that fun stuff.
Cool. Interesting. And a question regarding something that you mentioned before, like breathing and being in the email marketing space all the time. So do you have a reference for like brands that are really innovative and doing like great marketing, great email marketing in your experience that you follow and you suggest other people start following as well?
Yes. Okay. So there is one brand. Let me pull them up, and they are like super cool. I absolutely love what they do. You would think I would remember their name, but I get so many emails in one day. I'm just like, what in the world? Oh my gosh, they are blanking from my system. They sell skincare products. Let me type in skincare into my inbox here. Here we go. Primarily pure.
How do
Primarily pure. Yes. Yeah. So they are PRIMALLY pure.com. They have very beautiful emails in terms of with how they are set up, what they look like. But they also have a really good text to image ratio within this as well too. So I absolutely love their emails on the like e-commerce side. Another one as well too is they're called High Speed Daddy. They are also super cool as well too. They sell diaper bags. But they're basically also too, they're more so like they're really cool backpacks. They're very extremely tactical and they're really cool. So I also recommend checking out their emails as well too.
Interesting. And what about omnichannel? Do you also provide SMS marketing stuff, or you focus only on or ManyChat or like messenger channels, because they all coincide? I mean, email marketing, messenger, and SMS, or you only focus on email at the moment?
Yeah, so I very much so stick with my zone of genius of email. I do have some clients that we do some text messaging stuff with, but it's very much like the content strategy is basically the exact same. All of the philosophies and my questions and how my brain works, totally the same. It's just a little bit different in terms of with like the length of content, because obviously we're not going to send a whole email via text, right? So yeah, it's basically very similar, but I usually just stay within my zone of genius.
Bless you.
Thank you. I was like, okay, I need to get this sentence out before I sneeze.
You did a great job. What about pre-segmenting the customers? You mentioned the skincare brand, and I see a lot of skincare brands pre-segmenting the customers. And what I mean by that is they use quizzes. So is this something that you're an advocate of, like using quizzes and then putting different customers in more buckets, or is it not simple enough for your philosophy?
So for some people it works in terms of with like primarily they do have a quiz that puts people into different spots. High Speed Daddy doesn't have a quiz. It doesn't make sense to have a quiz, like unless you're going to quiz for their favorite color and then you pick out the backpack, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's really about like your brand in terms of with what makes sense that's going to help somebody be able to get them to purchase, right? Like for me, it makes total sense to have a skincare quiz because I wouldn't know, like for me, I'm not a skincare expert. So I would have no idea what products I would need for my particular like skin type, right? For a backpack company, it's very much so like, what color do you want? Do you want a big backpack? Do you want a small backpack? Do you want the lunch pail? Like that's very much so something that somebody could go through by themselves. And so again, it really just depends on how you can best serve that customer. Another thing I'll mention is that, going back to the skincare, like you can provide more personalized options. That is definitely the way you want to go within e-commerce. So if you can keep it as simple as non-buyer versus buyer, like, for a backpack company, you could easily do that because it's not very much so like needed. But in other worlds, if you can get more specific, just do not overwhelm yourself with feeling like, because this is my problem. So often we get super overwhelmed because we're like, ooh, I need to send an email to this audience. Ooh, another. And then you're like writing 10 emails a week. And I'm like, dude, that's too much. Like, that's a lot of freaking work. So if you can just keep it really simple and try to keep people within their containers, that's the way I would do it. And so that's my rant. That's my gist.
Okay, awesome. I want to start wrapping things up, and before we conclude, so can you please share 3 or 4 or 5 tips, most important tips? Obviously, we spoke a lot about focusing on the customer, understanding how we can serve the customer, and understanding his persona, but maybe just a few one-liners about big tips or misconceptions that you see a lot with new customers that people should avoid. So best practices and mistakes in 2 lines each.
Yes. Yes. Okay. I'm ready. I'm ready to rat all these out. Okay, cool. So the first one, keep your subject line super short and add preview text. Preview text is so incredibly important to add context to the email and add additional insight to the subject line, especially if you do more vague subject lines. Number two, use as few images as possible. Email deliverability is, again, a whole other topic. If you're wanting to learn more about that, I highly recommend using a tool called Glock Apps in order to be able to take a look at what they have going on in terms of with your deliverability. So that's two. Three, I would definitely recommend going through the process of making sure that, if anything, have a fulfillment sequence. A fulfillment sequence is where the money is at, especially if you're working through the process of getting returning customers. Like, this is how you retain customers for life, is through your fulfillment sequence. And then four, I would say do your weekly emails. That's so incredibly important. Like, just have that touch base with them once a week. That will change everything for you. And then five, I would always recommend every email have a CTA, whether it's to reply to the email, go to social, check out a product. Make sure in every email you are super clear on what you want them to do, and it'll amaze you how often people will start to do that. Like, all people want is direction, so just give them the direction.
Awesome. Wow. This is 5 very powerful tips. I love it. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Ashley. A lot of valuable knowledge and things to think about and improve and optimize. And where can people find more about you and connect to you?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay, cool. So yeah, you can definitely hop on over to my website. It's called ashleykdeluca.com. And then I also have a free community and podcast. And specifically, I focus again on really simplifying email marketing. So my podcast is called Email Marketing Simplified, and the Facebook group is also called Email Marketing Simplified. And so you can hop on over to my website to get the link to my Facebook group, my podcast, and all of the things.
Awesome. Great. I love it. I really feel that you practice what you preach. So this is amazing. I love it.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Have a nice day.